Well guys, we have some awesome news for today. Let's zoom into the area of Velyka Novosilka. There Ukraine regained some of the territory. So the situation there is mostly like that. Russians tried to go from Skudno village towards Vesely with a huge, really big convoy, and Ukraine repelled this Russian attack, totally annihilating it. And later on, Ukraine started its own counteroffensive, obviously using many of the drones. And Russians were not able to send some new reinforcements because they used everything for this useless attack. The Russians' main hub is located in Velyka Novosilka itself, but it is not that far away from the front line, so Ukraine also may strike Russians even in that settlement, disturbing the supplies. The information about the failed Russian attack was confirmed by other sources, and yeah, Ukraine went on counteroffensive over here. The fight is ongoing by the time I am filming this video, so I'm standing by for more information to understand what territories the Ukrainian army was capable to regain, but for sure Ukraine went across the front lines towards the Russian positions. But I have already received a video with the confirmation of how the long Russian convoy with 25 of the vehicles was totally annihilated by Ukraine. It is crazy what is happening, guys. All of those dots are the Russian vehicles, and there were at least 2 of the waves of the strikes, so here they go with tanks, MTLBs, BMPs, and also probably modernized versions of the crew-carrying vehicles, modernized from T-62 very ancient tanks. As usual, the Russian tank, probably with anti-mine plug, was going ahead. They tried to go across the fields, and yeah, lots of the Russian vehicles were just kaputted on the way. Then some Russian vehicles decided to turn back. It was already too late, and mostly they're stuck in this field road and just unable to go across the minefields. So part of the vehicles actually were kaputted by the mines, partially by the drones, partially by artillery. Ukraine was expecting this attack from Russia. The image of Ukrainian counterattack has not yet been shared, but we have the information about it from Ukrainian commanders that definitely Ukraine was capable to regain some of the ground. And as you can see, any sort of the tree line is actually a defense line. Here it goes, some of the trenches, you may see it over here. So actually it's very hard to go ahead with all of those defense lines. And yeah, Russians still trying to offense with all of their mighty power. Probably they accumulated all of their resources during the winter time to conduct their attacks during the springtime. Then the weather is good. But yeah, Ukraine was waiting for them. Yeah, just yesterday I've told you about the similar kind of the failure of the Russian strike in Pokrovsk direction, and here we go with the other direction in Velyka Novosilka. After all, it seems like the Russian generals act absolutely the same in different areas of the front lines. And yes, for Ukraine it is kind of profitable, as you may see. Well, according to the latest data, Ukraine was capable to regain all of those territories, including the Dnipro village, so Russians were repelled from this side of this shore of the river. Awesome. Yeah, that attack from Russia was a total disaster. Not only they didn't gain the territories, but lost. My friends, if you want to support the job that I do here almost every day on YouTube, you are very welcome to join me on Patreon as well. The link for my Patreon page is available in the video description just below. Thank you so much for maintaining my motivation to film the videos each day, because you know it takes lots of the time and lots of the effort, so thank you so much for everything, for your kind support. Well, even though Russians were not successful with their massive attack in Dnipro, but they gained some of the ground over here, not far away from Rozdolne. So it was yesterday and it is today. They got some of the fields under control, and they also want to assault over here. So it seems like the Russian generals elsewhere received the order to intensify the strikes on Ukrainian positions with all of the forces available. Why they're doing that? Well, we'll see in the coming days. But from their losses and just poor advancements, I may say that they're not successful so far with their mission. But again, guys, it's not the only failure which happened to the Russian army for the last 24 hours. Let's review the other Russian failed attacks. And by the way, hello my friends and welcome. My name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. Let's go. Yep, those are the legendary China-made golf carts which Russia uses a lot, and not just for supplies. They deliver their infantry into the fights directly on the front lines on totally unarmored vehicles. The attack happened from the Guyevo settlement, and it's the Kursk region of the Russian Federation. Ukraine still keeps its presence out there, fully controlling this territory, including Gomel, small village right at the border between Ukraine and Russia. Well, Russia tried to offense with 5 of the vehicles. There were 3 of the armed personnel carrying vehicles and 2 of the China golf carts. They attacked in the China golf carts. It's freaking crazy. Well, Ukraine didn't let it through, and let's check out some other screenshots of that failed Russian attack. Yeah, blurred it a little, so after they failed with the China golf cars, they sent some of the armored vehicles. After all, wow. Yeah, those kind of totally, there were 3 of those, and all of them were caputed at the same freaking road. So why Russians are advancing across the roads, field roads? Well, because the probability to hit the mine here is minimal. Well, at least you can see the mine. Also, I guess the Ukrainian army could mine the road also with some extra devices, but it is hard to do because most of those strikes are happening in a neutral gray area. So for Ukraine, it is also risky to go to the place and to mine the road. Usually Ukraine uses remote mining. There are some special engineering vehicles for that use, and also drones could mine remotely as well. And later on, Russians sent some sort of the modified version of the infantry carrying vehicle, again modernized from T-62 tank probably. So the barrel with the turret was removed, and this thing, this hanger on the top, the metal one, was just welded on top of the base. And yes, the result is understandable. Our paratroopers actually did this defense mission in Kursk region, a very capable forces of Ukraine. Guess around 80% of the hits towards the enemy targets are because of the FPV drones, so Ukraine really mastered that feature. And you know, recently there was the interview with one of the Ukrainian drone operators. He's fighting already for many years in Ukrainian army in a special drone battalion, or now Ukraine even has the drone regiments. Well, it has been confirmed through many of the videos during all of those years that guy caputed roughly 2,000 of the Russian troops. 2,000 soldiers, single drone operator of Ukrainian army. Yeah, could be a talented guy indeed, but he did it alone, so just imagine those Russian losses. Russia started this war not understanding the circumstances of it. But with their Kursk attack, Ukrainian army was forced to leave the areas of this local forest spot. Yeah, every time it's better to secure the own forces, and then you see that the enemy is advancing, it's better not to risk, withdraw and use some of the FPV drones. Well, there was one more Russian attack in Klishiivka village. They occupied this one several months ago. You know, this village was coming from one hand to another many of the times, but now Russia controls it, and they decided to attack towards Ukrainian positions, towards Bilohora, but were met again with resistance from Ukrainian side. Well, Russians used some of the BMP-2 vehicles, plus it's a very rare case that they used some of the MRAP Tiger vehicles as well. One mid-wave was stopped, and they decided to send one more attack. They landed their infantry forces, but vehicles after all were taken away, and the rest job done by Ukrainian FPV drone operators and the other drone type operators who just dropped some presence on Russians. In the very morning, Russians sent some of the vehicles probably to evacuate the remaining of their forces, but again they were just zeroed. So yes, one more unsuccessful attack of the Russian army for the last 24 hours. As you can see, they intensified their activity all across the front lines in many of the directions. And here Russians again tried to attack on unarmored vehicle just in some of the track or something. There were 10 of the Russians inside. Why do they put everyone all together in the same vehicle in such a vulnerable environment? I'm out of clue. This tactics really doesn't bring benefits for Russia at all. But they continue to do like that, and it is very profitable for Ukrainian army. So Russian army should have tremendous losses. For this month, I expect them to surge, judging on the videos I receive. Yeah, that vehicle is totally gone. No one made it out. Yeah, once again, we're returning to those dates. Then Russia attacked with a huge convoys, and they have tremendous losses. I'm reviewing that stuff in almost every of my videos. Well guys, to be more objective, I also monitored the Russian side, and they also use drones all across the front lines. The only thing that Ukraine does not advance with the huge convoys, but still Ukraine has vehicles. It's usual to move the forces. And yes, unfortunately Russians managed to hit our vehicles, our artillery, and here some of the MRAP as well. But those vehicles are usually alone, so Ukraine tries to minimize the losses. While judging on the evidence on the videos coming, the only place where Ukraine used some of the convoys was in Belgorod region, and there unfortunately Ukraine has more losses than usual. So this tactics with the convoy attacks, it is not good if enemy has FPV drones, and enemy has FPV drones, but probably Ukraine doesn't have the other strategy rather than to advance with armored vehicles in those much smaller convoys compared to the Russian side, but still those are easier to spot and easier to hit at the same time with lots of the drones. Yeah, we have it posted on the Russian channels. What is that? Probably SV90 or something. I guess after all it's not Bradley, it's something different. Also Russians claim that they were able to trophy roughly 30 of those kind of the MRAP vehicles like Max Pro, but they do not use those on the front lines, just for their propaganda purposes, that's it. Simply Russians cannot repair and maintain those vehicles without the spare parts. Alright guys, I posted this video yesterday, I took it from the Russian channels, and I may agree with many of the commentators who say that it is after all not the Archer artillery system which was hit by Russians, no. So yes, initially they showed the Archer system, it has a very big back and very big gun over here. So definitely you can see it here, it's kind of the unique cannon with this big back, with this kind of the barrel or gun or cannon, and the front part of the vehicle is quite unique with this cockpit and the cannon. Yes, it's kind of small compared to the usual truck, I would say. Well, they show this Archer, and later on it happened the funny montage. Definitely it is not Archer, guys. You may say that it is completely different system without this reload box on the back. The vehicle is much shorter, the canopy is totally different, and as well as the cannon itself. The name of it is the self-propelled artillery system Bogdana, which Ukrainian army produces itself. And yet Russians do not publish the video of how they kaput the Archer system. I guess if there was such a video, they would absolutely 100% publish it. Not doing that funny montage with Bogdana. And yes, Archer was operating from this position, it was working there, lots of the smoke as you can see coming from the cannon, and since it's very fast with reloading and everything, I guess it shot some of the rounds and left their place. Otherwise we'd have the evidence published by the Russian side. So this is Archer from the close perspective, and this is Bogdana artillery system, basically the huge truck with a huge cannon. Bogdana artillery also could be like this, installed on different truck. I personally like this modification more because of the armored cockpit. Well, here you also have the armor plates, but they're not as robust as on this vehicle. Also it could be like this, so Ukraine uses lots of the different tracks for artillery system. Alright, about the drones, Ukraine is actively already using this mother drone system, which launches some of the FPV to hit Russian positions, and it may do it further away from the front lines. Well, maybe that feature explains why Ukraine was so effective against North Korean's artillery systems Koksan. Like 1 month ago, several of those were damaged, and just recently, one more system was kaputted by FPV. But with this mother drone unit, it is actually possible to reach further away, like at least 30 kilometers away from the front lines easily. Alright, again we have more news about Taurus. Definitely Germany is oriented to provide those missiles to Ukraine. The future Chancellor Merz said about it already, and he is also planning to visit Ukraine very soon. It actually could be his first visit, and he might bring those missiles with him, or at least some sort of the agreement to provide Ukraine with those very wonderful missiles. And Taurus is more effective compared to Storm Shadow or Scalp. It flies further and it has the bigger warhead, and also designed to reach very deep into the bunkers. So actually there are two of the shells inside. One penetrates the concrete, armor, iron, whatsoever, and the other one kabooms inside. And you know, actually it could be effective against even some of the bridges. Yeah, we'll see, but I hope that Germany will supply those. And Germany, thank you so much for supporting Ukraine, and we also wait that you will reinforce your own army. Yeah, history is like that. Now allies are looking for the strong German army. Germany is not as it was long time ago. No, Germany is just Awesome. An interesting video posted by the Russian propaganda RIA Novosti. They already deleted this video, but internet remembers everything. So here goes the Russian drone operator, and he tells of how to operate the FPV drone located really far away from the front lines. He said more than 1,000 kilometers away, and you may ask, okay, where is his location? Just look outside the window. Does it look like something familiar for you? Well, it is a wonderful place just in the heart of Moscow, a real estate and business center, Moscow City. I think that judging on this video, you may even find the exact apartment. So yes, actually Ukraine has the absolute right now to hit this facility, because there are some of the Russian soldiers which are flying their drones in Ukraine, as they say. Yeah. 1,000 kilometers away from the front lines, but they operate. And we may always show this kind of the video saying that it was a legitimate military target. Yeah, probably that is why Russians have already deleted it.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, this peace deal is about these so-called 5 territories, but there's so much more to it. There's security protocols. There's no NATO, Article 5. I mean, it's just, a lot of detail attached to it. It's a complicated situation, rooted in some real problematic things happening between the two countries, and I think we might be on the verge of something that would be very, very important for the world at large. On top of that, I believe there's a possibility to reshape the Russian-United States relationship through some very compelling commercial opportunities that I think give real stability to the region too. Partnerships create stability.
Yeah, Witkoff is again with his pro-Russian rhetoric saying about those 5 regions, and Zelensky already responded on that in the United States there is pro-Russian propaganda inside the government. And particularly for Witkoff, Zelensky said that he has no authority to conduct what he is doing. Yes, Zelensky absolutely has the balls of steel. He is the commander in charge of the army that fights against the bigger nuclear superpower out there and against the biggest country in the world, Russia, and at the same time he has to fight against those creepy cryptocrats from the United States of America. It is crazy. And Zelensky already said that will never recognize the Russian right over Ukrainian territory. And you see how they speak about the commercial development of the relations between United States and Russia. It is absolute outstanding, yeah. By the time Russia strikes civilian objects in Ukraine, and for Donald Trump those are just mistakes, well, I would say United States of America is not our ally at this stage. Yes, Ukraine still receives the military support from the United States, but those are the old packages and they will just expire very, very soon. I think, guys, that Trump will push Ukraine even harder. And again, he will cancel the military support and intelligence data for Ukraine in the coming maybe even days. Well, at least I predict it. I just hope that I am wrong.
Against Russia after their latest attack, and do you have an update on the rate and when you might announce them?
Well, I already have sanctions on Russia. I put them there. If you remember, Nord Stream 2, that's the big pipeline that goes through Europe. I stopped it. That's Russia's pipeline, the largest pipeline, I think, in the world, goes to Germany. And I stopped it.
The question was whether Donald Trump is going to implement more sanctions on Russia after Russian strike on Sumy. Donald Trump said, I already did sanctions on Nord Stream 2, which doesn't exist any longer. And then he continued with other bullshit. So yeah, Donald Trump is not going to implement new sanctions on Russia. It is already understandable from his response. And yeah, they want to make business with Russia. Yeah, that's the new reality of the United States of America. Guys, in the United States, I know that mostly you support Ukraine, like majority supports Ukraine, and majority is already against this orange guy, but somehow he was elected. So you guys have responsibility on what is happening to us as well. I'm not accusing you, my American friends, no, and thank you so much again for your kind support of Ukraine. I just hope that American society will learn that lesson and further they will never elect those incompetent leaders.
Purchase more Patriot missile batteries?
Oh, I don't know. He's always looking to purchase missiles, you know. He's against, listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war, right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size and then hope that people give you some missiles.
Oh, what a delusional bastard. Guys, I don't have any sort of the words to describe my anger. So he stated here that Ukraine started the war. Okay. And also he said that Zelensky is always asking for missiles. He asked to already purchase freaking Patriot air defense systems. Air, like air we breathe, and defense systems against the Russian missiles, against the Russian drones, against the Russian aircraft. Purchase, not taking the taxpayers' money from American budget, but purchase those missiles and those systems, because Ukraine absolutely needs those, because as Donald Trump says, Russia does mistakes, yeah, like in Sumy. Fuck, I'm so angry, guys. And I cannot stay calm about it, my friends. I need to tell about this arrogance, this incompetence, this idiocracy that you have out there in United States. It is not fucking normal, guys. It is beyond understanding. I wonder how Zelensky keeps himself okay, and then he speaks about Donald Trump and with Donald Trump, because this guy is totally insane.
I was wrong. I now believe that supporting Ukraine is America first.
Alright, about the good news, probably you know Mark Burns, who attended Kiev not long time ago. Kiev and nearby villages, he witnessed what Russia did in Ukraine. This guy is the big religious influencer out there, also in the MAGA community. Donald Trump also sometimes listens to him, and he said that he was wrong not supporting the military help for Ukraine. Now he says that the national security interest of United States includes supporting Ukraine. He is determined about it, and that Russia should be punished for the war crimes they did in Ukraine. So this guy is way more smarter than Witkoff and Donald Trump altogether. Also, you know, to admit his own mistake that he was wrong about this very important issue, you should be really a powerful and strong person to admit that. Unlike, again, Donald Trump, who even doesn't admit that he lost the elections of 2020. And I don't care about Burns' religious stuff and so on. What he tells now about Ukraine is really encouraging. Yeah, first of all, not for Ukrainians, but he has some influence in the United States, also a right side, a Republican side and MAGA side as well, which is very good. A chief of the Russian FSB Narishkin stated that the goal of the peace talks for Russia are basically the same: denazification of Ukraine, demilitarization of Ukraine, cancellation of all of the, he says, discriminatory laws against Russians, which do not exist in Ukraine actually. And yes, recognition of the Russian sovereign borders. It means all of the Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk and Crimea should be recognized by Ukraine as the Russian territories. It will never ever happen, my friends. But Russia insists on that, and before those were the goals of the Russian special military operation, and now those were transferred as the goals of the peace agreement with Ukraine, but basically the goals are the same. So yes, as we see, Russia doesn't want any sort of the peace in Ukraine. And you know, the big media sources like Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Telegraph, they all say one thing, that Russia doesn't want to negotiate, and that Trump just follows the Russian propaganda, Russian policy basically. Witkoff is just a translator from Russian into English, but the text is the same, written somewhere in FSB or in Kremlin. However, at the same time, the part of the Trump's team like Rubio, Kellogg, they're against those Russian narratives, so in a way there is the conflict, but Rubio and Kellogg, they don't have that huge weight over Trump or near Trump as Witkoff, for example, and Trump would listen to Witkoff more, I think, compared to Rubio or Kellogg. For Marco Rubio, I would just suggest to leave that Trump's team and start his own movement within Republican Party. Yeah, it's kind of risky, but Rubio will have his support in Republican Party because not all of the Republicans are MAGA. I think that old school Republicans are just in shock of what is happening between United States and Russia relations, and the attitude towards Ukraine is just crazy from Donald Trump. And yes, actually, to secure his own reputation, Marco has no other chance but to leave Trump's team, actually. Because in a way, Trump also shares responsibility for not protecting Ukraine, so for all of those casualties which Russia causes. Because Trump follows the Russian plan and he doesn't want to provide even air defense systems to Ukraine. It is absolute craziness. So Marco, yeah, that's my suggestion for you, go to opposition. Alright, Vance with his remark about Zelensky's statement about the Russian propaganda in USA. Yeah, try to guess what Vance said. He's a usual White House bully, I call him. I think it's sort of absurd for Zelensky to tell American government, which is currently keeping his entire government and war effort together, that we are somehow on the side of the Russians. Oh my god, you should be blind not to see that you are on the Russian side, really, Vance. The European Union to ban Serbia if President joins Putin's victory parade. Good move from European Union Commission. So if Vučić goes to the Russian parade, Serbians will not have the perspective even to join the European Union, at least under the current president. And judging on what happened recently, I mean all of those protests, I guess for Vučić it's better to stay home. But Slovakian Fitz already say that he will go for the Russians parade. Well, Slovaks, I hope you'll have the better choice next time. China soldiers who were fighting for Russians and surrendered to Ukrainian side say that everything is good with them and they eat even McDonald's food. Probably they will be much bigger than they'll go back to China. Well, compared to North Koreans, they are more communicative. They went even to the local conference where they told about their experience in the Russian army and their future plans. Obviously to go back to China. Well, for me it's hard really to say whether it was the good move from Ukrainian government to show those prisoners of war openly, I mean Chinese, because in a way it may complicate the relations between Ukraine and China. Definitely it will complicate those. So yeah, all of the biggest nuclear countries out there, Russia, United States and China, they will have something to do against the Ukrainian government, but after all China already works with Russia. Nevertheless, we also obtain the spare parts from China, I know it for sure. And unfortunately guys, I start to receive not good signals about those drone parts for our volunteers, and now China, after all, tries to block those companies, even in some Western countries which work with Ukrainian volunteers or Ukrainian army. Coincidentally or not, but it started to happen right after Ukraine showed those Chinese prisoners of war. On the other hand, Ukraine shows the legit information that Chinese mercenaries are out there, and please, China, do something with your citizens, at least punish those, as for example Uzbekistan does by jailing their own citizens if they fight for the Russian army, or in any sort of the army, because mercenaries are not legal out there. But in China it seems like there is no punishment for those guys. Alright my friends, and now please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so you help me a lot, and as usual I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.